Let's get to a little politics now. We all remember the fiscal cliff, right? Well, Congress certainly does, and the House, they today have dealt with a Republican counteroffer, something Speaker John Boehner is calling Plan B. All likelihood it's going to get through the House here, but it's got no chance of becoming law here. It will be DOA when it gets to the Senate, and for any reason if it got by there, the president's already promised a veto here. Now, Republicans and the White House, they are between $20 and $40 billion apart. I think even more than that when it comes to spending and taxes and on what a new top-end tax rate would look like. Republicans think a new rate ought to kick in at about $1 million for a household. The president, he says $400 grand. Trust me, that's not the biggest issue here. The cliff, it hits January 1, and if you do the math, that is only 12 days away. Okay. Like I said this in the newscast earlier, sound and fury signifying nothing. That was today the Plan B. They're not going to do it. If the biggest problem was just what the new rates are going to be and to whom, they would have had this thing solved. They're going to find somewhere, Evan, around for $500,000. President's at $400 grand, Republicans are $1 million. They'll come out to $500,000. The real issue is the other stuff. And the other stuff becomes trickier in terms of what are they going to do about the debt limit? What are they going to do here about the spending cuts? What are they going to do about some of the other cuts, including to defense, et cetera? I know everybody thinks that the closer we are, we're actually going to go over this cliff, and it doesn't seem like the president's too petrified about the concept because his hand only gets stronger. But I think the GOP is going to have to capitulate before 12/31 because they have no leverage, zero, come January 1. You buy that?
Not entirely, only because the problem is that John Boehner and the members of his caucus don't necessarily come from the same position. I actually genuinely believe the Speaker wants to deal with this, but I also genuinely believe the Speaker can't deliver all of his members. The Republican Party nationally is going through a catharsis where they're purging their moderates. You see it in Indiana in the Senate race. You saw it 2 years ago in the Senate race in Utah, and you see it with House members having problems.
Everything you say is true, but a certain thing called November happened. Okay, and everybody saw what went down, and they all know the math that shows this thing demographically is going to get tougher and tougher to get elected. Get this out of the way if you're the Republicans. They want spending cuts. The president, he may want, give the president some cover for some of the cuts that he's going to want to do, but blame on the Republicans, and let the Republicans acknowledge, why are they fighting for the top 1%? It didn't do them any good in November, and half of them are Democrats anyway. Give the president his rates at $500,000. At the end of the day, this isn't a winner for them.
I completely agree with you. It is not a winner for them, but the Tea Party influence within the Republican primary has actually meant that they're not winning certain general elections. They're moving further and further to the right. They're scaring a lot of mainstream Americans, and as a result, it's not a winner for them, but they first have to get through a Republican nominating process, and they have real problems being able to keep it together.
Can we agree on what the math should be for this all to have been worthwhile? Over 10 years, the president is trying to get $4 trillion out, okay? And with what will happen come January 1, the automatic cuts that will kick in, they'll hurt everybody across the board. He'll get that number, maybe even a little bit more when you add it up over a 10-year period. I think if all this is done for $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion with some of the funny math that they'll do over 10 years, they shouldn't have done this in the first place. We have real systemic problems here if interest rates go up, as they historically always do, from where we are now to even 8%. I mean, they got to do something. And I'm coming from a perspective of saying I'm really afraid of the spending cuts to some of the social programs, but they have to happen. They got to raise.
But at what cost? I mean, how important is reducing the debt to you? Is it important enough that you're willing to crimp the economy, or
Andrew, it's not like it's an either or. It's going to happen at a certain rate.
No, but
the Chinese are going to stop buying.
But how you deal with it is an either or, because either you deal with it on such a substantial level now that you potentially put a crimp in the economy, or you make some headway on it and put the heavy lifting for down the road.
The CBO said we're going to take a hit for about 9 to 12 months, but the economy will be actually growing at a 4% rate. They believe by the first quarter of 2014 if you go through with these cuts. Why do you think it is that Wall Street is insisting that they get this thing down? And they get $4 trillion prospectively for 10 years. It's not because they want to pay more in taxes. They know the health of the economy right now. If the interest rates kick up, which it will happen, it'll happen. It's happened every time after this. We can't just keep putting this thing off. We got to do something about it. And again, some of the stuff that's going to get cut is stuff I really believe in. But I don't see there's another way. And I know progressives don't want to hear that, but it's got to be shared pain.
Bill Clinton's economic policies led to the largest sustained growth of peace and prosperity since World War II. The central point of his economic program passed the House of Representatives without a single Republican vote. It was actually a deficit reduction plan. It was to balance the budget. It was a mixture of taxes and spending cuts. And what it did was have lasting economic change, because all of a sudden the government wasn't competing with industry in the credit markets. As a result, the government was getting a little bit more out of the credit markets. There was more private capital available.
You said with one Republican vote.
Not a
this
single
one's
Republican
got to
vote.
have it too. The funny part is, if you look at the Plan B, there's no spending cuts. You know, the Republicans put forward a plan tonight with no spending cuts. The thing is turned up on its ear. And by the way, speaking of math, the House did vote and passed it 219 to 197 on that motion, establishing basically to move forward on Plan B. But don't even bother to read the fine print. It's not going anywhere. Okay, when we come back, though, a lot of political intrigue in our region. Dominic's going to tell you about what Cory Booker's plans are, and also, what about a candidate for mayor here that you saw during the Sandy hurricane disaster? Could be the Republicans' only shot. Forget about best one. We'll get into that after this.